Welcome back, sailors. This is your captain speaking, and welcome to another episode of Bruise News. So there's not really any news to talk about, so I thought we'd just sit here and make animal noises for a while. Does that work? Nailed it. I'm just joking around. There really isn't any news, so I thought I would just kind of gab about some stupid MMA and a little bit of boxing stuff, like rewinding back to something that happened a while ago, and sometimes discussions that happen on Facebook and other social media outlets. But we'll just jump right into that. So going back a few months ago, there was the Triple G versus Canelo Alvarez fight. And it was interesting because a lot of people were divided about the reason why Triple G ended up losing that fight by, it was crazy. It was kind of crazy because a lot of people thought that Triple G won that fight, and they thought that the first fight was actually more one-sided than the other one, and that one was a draw. So, to give it a breakdown, I think that the first fight was closer to a draw, and I understood why it went that way. Now, boxing is corrupt, and they do tend to do that when a fight is huge and it's close enough that they can call it a draw. They do that sometimes, and it's not to poke at anything. It's just that there's so much more money in a rematch when there's that much surrounding it, like when there's that much drama surrounding it, that a rematch between those two fighters, especially, who are probably the two best boxers in boxing right now, aside from Mayweather, who might or may not come out of retiring. But those two guys, they really pull in the money. Canelo is absolutely huge. In Mexico, he's the biggest draw that they have in Mexico, which is crazy considering that Mexico is really, like, Mexicans are boxers. Like, that's what they do. Like, that's what they're the best at in terms of anything that they do in, this world. What they do best other than garden is box. I'm just kidding. That was bad. No, I'm just joking. They're not all gardeners. I'm not racist or anything like that. I just thought I'd poke at something, some stereotypes. Stereotypically speaking, I'm just poking jokes right now because I don't know what to say at the moment. I didn't. Usually I write a lot, like, stuff down, and I like to have stuff to go off of when I'm talking about things. And today I literally have nothing. I wrote down 2 pieces on a note, like talk about Canelo and Triple G, and then talk about stuff. That's literally what I have written down. So it's really off the top of my head. I didn't plan on saying that at all. Just so if anybody's laughing or if anybody's offended, there was nothing meant by it. There's racist stereotypes you can look at every race on the planet. It's just one of those things. And if you can't laugh at yourself, what can you laugh at? Anyways, the first fight was very well fought on both ends. Canelo fought his style of fight, Triple G fought his style of fight, and at the end, Triple G was more effective in my opinion, and I did think that he won that fight. As a Canelo fan, more so than a Triple G fan, I would say. Maybe, I don't know, I love them both, to be honest. I really love them both, but all of that aside, as a fan of both of them, I did think that Triple G won the first fight, personally. I thought that he won it. I thought it was not as close as anybody else had it either. I thought it was about 8-4, per rounds. So you have to kind of look at it from those eyes. You look at the numbers, you look at how effective that Triple G was with his game plan compared to how effective Canelo was with his. Because Canelo tends to be a bully-style fighter himself. So when 2 bullies are going at it, one of them is going to be able to push the other one back. And that's what happened. Regardless of that, Canelo was still very effective in terms of being, having to fight off the ropes and out of the corners. He did very, very well, especially against Triple G, who's probably also one of the hardest counter-punchers and just general punchers in the first place. He knocks people out when their blocks are up. So the guy's an absolute monster. So moving on to the second fight, Canelo really adjusted, and I felt like that was the whole reason why the judges ended up giving the nod to him. Now, you can look at it from different ways. You can look at it like they were in Mexico, they were Mexican judges, they were everything related to that, and people had actually told Triple G not to take the fight in Mexico because something like this would happen. Now, if it was completely one-sided, like Bradley versus Pacquiao, where it was Pacquiao won every single round and dominated Bradley, and then they just gave the nod to Bradley because Pacquiao wanted 50, or he wanted 30 million to fight Mayweather, and they knew that if Mayweather was coming off a win and undefeated in his last 12 fights at the time or something like that, 12 or 13 fights, that he would be able to ask for that 30 million compared to Mayweather that they know they're going to have to pay $50 million to. So it's not like that at all. The fight was going to be established. There was no difference in the amount of money that they were going to be making going into that. So I think that Triple G knew that if the fight's going to go one way or the other, it's going to go that way without that corruptness to it. And a lot of people do blame that decision on that, but I don't see it. I thought that Canelo and Triple G were very on par with each other. In fact, if there was a draw in the second fight, or if there was a draw, it should have been the second fight, to be honest. It was much closer of a fight than the first fight was. Going along with that, though, Triple G didn't adjust. He did exactly what Triple G does in all of his fights. In his last 35 fights that he's had, 36 fights that he's had, he does the same thing. He walks you down, he punches you. That's what Triple G do. That's what he do. And he did. But Canelo adjusted, and he went from being a counter bully style fighter to really being more aggressive. He was going to the body more. He was trying to slow him down. He was shaking him up. He was walking Triple G down more often. He was much more elusive. He made Triple G miss a lot more than in the first fight. I just think that the adjustments that Triple G made were non-existent, and I think that the adjustments that Canelo made a huge impact watching the fight, and it was clear that there was a difference between the two. Canelo really, really wanted to win that fight, and Triple G kind of just went out there to fight. Now, it's interesting that it went the way that it did, because if that is the case and Triple G is that good that he doesn't really need a game plan and he just goes out and he just smokes the top boxers in the world, then the guy is a god. Like, there's no other way to say it. On the flip side of that, though, Canelo is a young, hungry guy who has had his drama with him too, because he was another guy who, Mexico's not really known for having the best standards in terms of food quality. So there have been times in the past where fighters have been hit for steroids and stuff when they're feeding their cows and the meat is tainted essentially, and that does happen down there more frequently. And they'd found Canelo not guilty of that being the case when he was busted for that stuff, because he had a low amount in his system and it was flushed out and all of that stuff, because that's what happens. So I think that along with all the drama and everything that's happened, you have to take a look at the entire picture of it all. And no, I don't think that there was anything corrupt about this. Yes, there's going to be a third fight and possibly even a fourth, depending or how that fight goes out. But going into a third fight, if there is one, which I'm assuming there will be, Triple G has to make adjustments. He has to adjust to what Canelo has done, and we have to see a different outcome. I would love to see a stoppage in this fight. There's no reason why there can't be a stoppage. These guys need to take a risk. They need to show everybody that this wasn't the way that it wasn't a shock piece, that it wasn't corrupted, they got to go out and they got to give everybody a fight to look for. Now, going on with that, MMA is awesome. And I love mixed martial arts, and I love watching all aspects of it. I love watching ONE FC, I love watching Bellator, I love watching street fights, I love watching the UFC, I love watching their pay-per-views. I do everything that I possibly can. Going along with that, there's a reason why the UFC is so much bigger than these other corporations like Bellator and ONE FC, and it's because they're willing to take chances, and they're willing to really put as many shows out as possible. You really only see Bellator have like a pay-per-view every couple months, and they're not as big, and they usually do them on Fridays when everybody's doing stuff, because Friday's the end of the work week and everybody's trying to adjust and get out and kind of get ready for the weekend. Friday's it's not a good day for relaxing and watching stuff like that. Saturday's the perfect day. If I was Bellator, I would personally be trying to make pay-per-views and shows and get a TV deal and be on TV as often as possible, as humanly possible, because there's nothing that they're going to be able to do to touch the UFC. The UFC is the big dog. They're the ones that run the pond. They're the ones that run the show. They're the ones, and nobody will ever be able to touch them unless they take chances. And if Bellator and ONE FC keep picking up losing UFC fighters after they've done what they've done there, because usually when I see that happen, when I see a fighter in the UFC lose 3 fights, 4 fights in a row, and they're about to get dropped from their contract or they're just going to leave, the first thing they do is go to those other companies instead of trying to reassess what's happening. Now, it's obvious that that's what you have to do. You have to reassess and you have to go and fight in other places to get back. You look at Arlovsky. Arlovsky did that for like 8 years. He left the UFC heavyweight champion. He lost a couple fights in a row. He was cut. He went to other organizations. He lost here. He lost to Fedor. He won here, you know, whatever. And he ended up getting back to the UFC. And he did so well getting back. Like, he had really adjusted and moved into that higher, upper echelon of those tiered fighters that were up there. And he was doing super well. Like, you know, he beat Travis Brown. He beat a lot of the top guys getting up there, and he was really close to a title shot even, which is crazy thinking about Arlovsky, because he was one of those first guys in the company when people were really starting to watch it after the Bonner and Forrest Griffin fight. He was one of the guys that people were looking at as, you know, a big dude. You know, Randy Couture, you know, Arlovsky, Tim Sylvia, who's just absolute garbage. That guy's like 500 pounds now or something. What happened to him? So, yeah, the whole reason why these companies don't end up getting as successful as they are is because they're not willing to take chances on the younger fighters and be willing to go in and compromise on a TV deal and really get your product out there. Because that's the point. That's the thing that I'm doing right now, is I'm going to pump out as much stuff as I possibly can to get the content out there. I don't care if I'm getting 13 views a video. I don't care if I get 20 views a video. I don't care how many subscribers I get. As long as I get more stuff out there and we get more viewers and it gets shared more, that stuff will eventually happen. But I just have to keep working at it. And now is the time that I'm starting to realize that. Almost got into a motivational speech there, and we don't want to be doing that anymore, even though they're great. You know, you don't want to be a person who lives in your stories. That's a quote from How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if anybody watches that, but that's my show. That's my favorite show. That and, you know, there's a couple of things. Just How I Met Your Mother. I've watched this show so many times. I'm getting off topic. Let's get back to some MMA and some UFC stuff. So, I'm just looking at stuff. See, I don't have anything written down, and I'm like trying to think of other subjects that I could possibly talk about right now, and I'm just droning on in a video that could have been over 30 seconds ago. We don't want to make the video too long. I got to talking about stuff. I talked about some boxing, which is different compared to everything. I was going to talk about some WWE stuff, but I don't know how many people actually watch that at this moment. Like, what am I going to talk about? How, you know, Daniel Bryan might be injured. He might have a concussion right now. That's news that if you're a wrestling fan, you should know of at that moment. You know, Kevin Owens, he turned heel against Kofi, which was crazy, but everybody saw it coming. That actually wasn't supposed to be what happened, though. Funny thing is, there's a rumor going around that Kevin Owens was supposed to play a TV dad, and that was going to be his push to the WWE title, is he was going to be like a normal guy who is good at fighting still. Like, he's a dad. He's like, you know, kind of got that Heath Slater thing going on where I got kids. I got to feed my kids. You know, I'll do anything to be on TV. Well, that was going to be Kevin Owens' shtick going in and moving forward and beefing with Kofi and Daniel Bryan and even going up to Mania, because Kevin Owens was actually the one booked to win at Mania and be the main babyface on SmackDown right beside Roman Reigns. So it's interesting to see how this went, and then they changed Kevin Owens to heel. Kevin Owens is such an awesome wrestler. Like, he's so good. He's so good on the mic, and he's such a good wrestler, even for a big chubby guy. He's so freaking good to watch. He makes good TV, and I hope the company realizes and sticks with that guy, because he is money anywhere and anything that he does. Anyways, I appreciate everybody watching this video. I'm sorry it's not as great as some of my other videos and with all the information. That's not really my fault. There's got to be more drama on that side over there, okay? Like, it's not me. If you're going to go blame people, go and blame, you know, the UFC fighters and other fighters for not being more dramatic. I'm surprised there was no Conor and TJ Dillashaw news at all, you know, but what can you do? Today's just one of those days. It's hot, you know, it's rainy, it's whatever. You know, but we got there, and we got a nice little chunk of video out. Anyways, again, I appreciate everybody for watching the video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get this thing out there. Have a good one.